Given the introduction, reminds me of something that Ignatius Loyola suggested years ago, which was, let me try to paraphrase this. In about an hour from now, when this is over, you will face the disparity of the grandness of your expectations as a result of the reality of my smallness. That's what's going to happen here, so get lucky. I hope you'll get lucky. All right, so I think it says here that, Paige, read this to me, will you? Something about what am I supposed to do here today?
What is the motivation/inspiration to undertake the creative process in music?
Stop. It's very simple. It's very, very simple. Someone asks me to write a piece. I can't think of anything better for a composer than a talented musician, not a non-talented musician, to request a piece from a composer. It is the inspiration itself. You want to understand who that person is, what the venue that they're going to be playing it is, and how to adapt a piece of music to that specific individual. That to me is the most important thing that ever happens. Yeah, I write plenty of pieces when I'm not asked, but boy, that's charming. That's really wonderful. It just sets everything in the right motion. So now, before you ask the next question, I am going to talk about this particular concerto, which you see the orchestra lined up to play here. And the picture you see in the background is one of the urban pictures. This one is a picture of Torino, and that is the Philharmonia 900 of Torino. And if you can see carefully in the first row or so, you'll see Chris Collins there and Sean Dobbins playing drums and so on. So you'll see some Detroit people in that picture as well. But, so now I'm going to relate what Paige just asked me. Chris Collins, about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 now, asked me to write a piece for the Detroit Torino Urban Jazz Project. And I said, Chris, of course. Chris is, I think, a world-class jazz saxophone player. And we're lucky to have him on board here at Wayne State University, and he's done many great things for us, and he will continue to do that. Anyhow, I said, Chris, what's it for? He said, well, it's for this jazz project, and that's great, but what's the venue? What's going to happen? I said, well, this is the culmination project, or the culmination concert of what I've been doing in Italy for the last 4 or 5 years, and I need a concerto for jazz quintet and large orchestra. Oh, that's big. You see in front of you the resultant score, but I'm jumping way ahead now, called Urban Pictures, and you're welcome to look at that. So I said, well, what's the orchestra? And Chris said, well, piccolo, 2 flutes, alto flute, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, bass clarinet, 2 bassoons, contrabassoon, 4 French horns, 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, 4 tubas, timpani, 3 percussion players, jazz quintet, and 50 strings. Okay. If you look at that score, you look at the score right at the very first page of music, which I'll bring up to you anyhow on the computer, but you'll see the instrumentation down the left side. That's why I brought it. Whether you read music or not, you can look at the orchestration or the instrumentation down the left side of the score if you want to look at it. Well, gee. How long should it be, Chris? 20 minutes, maybe 25? Oh, that's a major piece. I mean, concertos, if you go to the symphony, Detroit Symphony, and they play the Beethoven violin concerto, it's 20 minutes, I think, something like that. It's about the same duration as this piece. So I knew I was in for a heck of a writing project. And Chris, what's it supposed to be about? Jim, write something about the city of Detroit. Write something about the fact that we're sister cities with Torino, Italy. Oh, I didn't know that. Why are we sister cities with Torino? Torino is the home of Fiat motor car. And Torino is a manufacturing city, much like Detroit is a manufacturing city, or was. And maybe there's kind of a was in both cases, because things have changed for both of those cities. And Torino has undergone a renaissance. Remember that? You remember it. You remember it because Coleman Young talked about Renaissance City. And
Absolutely.
That's absolutely it. So we've been trying to undergo a renaissance for a long time now. And I really believe, I know I'm overly optimistic, that it's kind of happening.
Yes, it is.
Just look down the Woodward corridor. Some good things are really happening in the city of Detroit. Let me get back to the pictures. Okay. Okay. About Detroit, huh? Oh, man, I've been teaching down here for 41 years.
Wow.
I come down here, I come down here every day of my life for 41 years. So I know a little bit about this city, and I know about Cass Avenue, and I've walked downtown, and I've walked all around here, and I've seen it. I used to live here. I was, the first 12 years of my education, 12 years of school were Detroit public schools, Detroit schools. So I know a little bit about that. And the thing that strikes me about Detroit are the streets and the people. And the first movement title is called Mean Streets. And you just walk around. You know what I'm talking about, I think. And you'll see some of the people, and you'll get the idea. We are one tough town.
Yeah.
I really believe it, and I try to think, what does that mean? That we are a tough town, but we are a resilient town to my music. How could I voice that somehow in what I'm going to write? And is it even possible to do? Somewhere we're in these questions, I know. I'm sure we are.
I'm sure we are.
How do you get meaning into a piece of music? This is a long argument, and a lot of people from humanities and from philosophy say there's no meaning. Unless there are words, there is no meaning to music. You can bet that I disagree with that. And I'm going to disagree with it because I put the meaning there. And a musician, especially a jazz musician who's improvising, can do that as well. I really truly believe that. The meaning that I put in, you may not receive. You may get it in a different metaphysical state, but I'm telling you there's something there. And don't you think for 1 minute, or don't not think that Mozart didn't put meaning into his music, or Beethoven, or any of these other composers down the symphonic line. Beethoven even said when he does this, what is that? He said, that's fate knocking at your door.
Whoa.
And it is fate. Now you listen to that piece and it is fate. Excuse me. Little or no question that there is something there. There is some meaning there. So as a composer then, I try to figure out what melodic lines, what chord changes, what rhythm can I put in a piece of music that will project this meaning that I'm trying to imbue in the piece. Okay? So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to, in this first movement called Mean Streets, I'm trying to make a piece that is gritty, that is rhythmic, that has some punch, that has some life, that has some resilience, that has some beautiful parts, because I'm trying to reflect this city that I've lived in for way too many years now. Okay. That's the idea. Now, any questions? I don't have to wait till the end for questions. You say, what are you talking about, Hartway? You can ask me now. Are we okay? Shall I go on? Read me another, give me something over here.
Would you like me to go in order?
Oh, I don't, well,
How does one know what it will sound like?
give me another one.
Fine. What are the guidelines and limitations in mixing the long tradition and music vocabulary of the symphonic orchestra with the jazz idiom?
Yeah, is there a problem with that? And what are the expectations of the audience? What are the expectations of the musicians who are going to get this piece to play it? That's coming up, though. And what are my expectations as the composer? I mean, here's an audience coming into an auditorium. This beautiful 1,600-seat auditorium. You can't see the seats, but you can see the orchestra. And they're an Italian audience expecting classical music. Some sort of, I won't say classical music, symphonic music of a high level. Okay? I don't want to disappoint them, but I want to be true to what I have to say too. So I have to cut that line somewhere with what I think will please them, yet will please me, yet will please the orchestra. Because you don't want to put a piece of music in front of the orchestra that they're going to say, oh my gosh, this is you can't play this, or this is jazzy stuff, or I'm not interested in that. You want to make sure, in order to get a good performance, that you've sort of tried to please all of these pieces along the way. But most importantly, I better be happy. Because you know who I'm writing this piece for? Really and truly? I hate to tell you. I'm writing it for me. I'm the one that's going to be sitting here for a year and a half writing this piece. They're going to hear it for 25 minutes. I better be happy doing what I'm doing because it's going to take quite a while. It took that long because I revised it several times. The actual writing took about 5 months. I think that's one of your questions. You know, that's very cool. It is. Okay. All right. I'm ready to go. Chris says there are pictures with this. So I looked at a whole bunch of pictures. They're pictures of the cities, Detroit and Torino. Some pictures, the cities were beautiful, as Detroit can be, and some pictures, they were in ruin. But there was one particular picture that they never showed during the performance of the piece because the pictures were flash in the background when the piece was being performed. It was of a guy, a street guy from Detroit whose name was Smoke. Smoke. Smoke was an African-American guy, grizzled face, rough-looking clothes, but you could tell from looking at Smoke that he knew something more than you did. That he had something going on somehow under the table. There was some tricky little inkling that Smoke had it all together. And there are a lot of people in Detroit who are kind of like that. They're well-meaning, they're good folks, but there's a hipness to them. Actually, Smoke was the inspiration for this piece. That picture, I thought, wow, what's this guy up to? Okay? So where do you start? How do I get the Smoke? Okay, we're going to try to get the Smoke.
Yeah.
Here we go. And I'll stop talking. Soon.
I'm really fun.
The first thing that I did was, I went to the piano. Well, let's make sure the sound is right. Where is she? There she is. Okay. Make sure you can hear this. Okay. First thing I did, I went to the piano and I did this chord and I wrote it. This is the finale notation program, so it's going to play it for you instead of me playing it. I could.
Do you have a photograph of Smoke?
I don't. Here it is. Oh, yeah. Now I know what you're thinking. This guy is good. That's, honest to God, that, we'll play it again because it's just, yeah. That's how the piece started. You gotta start somewhere. What do you think? You start with the whole damn thing? No, you gotta start with something. My music, and a lot of music, is based on motive and gesture and harmonic sonority. So I got the sonority that I liked, and then from there I could work more sonorities into that, and then I could develop some little motives. So we're going to hear the chord again. Let me show you what I did with it. Are you ready? Yeah. Let's just do this. I know, I was thinking, genius. This guy's a genius. Okay, there it is. Now, here it is with a little rhythm to it. Okay, got it? Another motive. This is not going to sound like a drum, but that's all I got for it. It's going to be this. Ba-bum, da, 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 da-dum, da. Okay, a little rhythm pattern. Here it sort of sounds. No. Bass. Okay. Well, you get something going here. Now we've got the chord, we've got the rhythm. Now we're going to do something more with the rhythm as it goes into the bass line. Here it comes. So far we've got a chord, we've got the rhythm going, we've got a bass line going, now we need a melody. Okay? And basically this is how the piece came together. So we'll just go right on. Here's the melody. I'm going to write for 2 saxophones. This is a jazz quintet. There's a soprano saxophone and a tenor saxophone. So we go on. We add another part to the melody. And some chord linkage to get to the next part. And here it all is together. Yes, sir.
When you're putting together this composition piece by piece, for you, do you usually come up with the harmony, the chord first, or is there usually a melody in your head?
Yeah. So I don't mean to be facetious here, but the melodic parts come to me melodically, and the harmonic parts come to me harmonically. So this part, the first measure over there that you see, that came as a part of a harmonic package that I wanted to introduce into the piece. It was also part of the melody line. It's also part of the melody line. So it's a combination of both.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, yes, sir.
I had a question sort of about the process
Yes.
of even coming up with those lines. I mean, is that kind of a like in your head sort of thing? Do you riff? Do you sort of play it out and like come up with a riff on the piano?
Walter, when did I start playing the piano? Age 7. I've been playing the piano for 60 years. I'm trying to get it right. One of these days, I'm going to get it right. I go to the piano and I improvise.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the way that's where all of us came from. It wasn't, all of what I wanted to say was preconceived. But when I get to the music, I go over here. And this, for me, is my comfort zone. As a matter of fact, just touching this thing, I feel better than standing here not touching it. So that's where that comes from. So, okay, anybody else? Now I've got what one might call the A section of this piece. I've got this little funky thing happening with the bass line. I've got a melodic line for my tenor players. I got the piano coming in, the drum part is going to be playing. Now I'm going to soften this with what I would call a B section or maybe a bridge. So here's that. This is intended to be a lot more lyrical, a little more cantabile, song-like. So we'll play this part. Okay, you got the whole piece. That's the whole piece, right? That's the whole first movement right there. But obviously, how long did that take? 1 minute and 40 seconds. I'm in deep trouble. I got to write a lot more than that. And I also have to leave room for my jazzers to improvise, because part of a jazz piece has to be the spontaneous composition, which is also known as improvisation. It just has to be. So I'm going to get to that. Also, when I enter this in my notation program, finale, if you're not a jazz musician, maybe you don't realize how stiffly this is being played. There is no ambiance to this. There is no interpretation of this. These notes are being played very, very coldly, very coldly. Let me bring up now. I think I'm done with this. I'm trying to bring up. Don't save it. Thank you. See if I can bring up full score now for you. And just okay. Now, you might be curious to know. Most musicians nowadays don't do. I wrote this whole thing in pencil before I put it on the finale. I wrote 90% of it in pencil before I actually notated in finale. I can do it either way, but I seem to get a grasp of it better if I'm actually writing it down physically. I'm an old man. That's how I used to do it. I still do it that way. But finale does give you this option that let me just make the score a little smaller. You can see a little bit more of it, and you notate the blasted thing, and I think one of Paige's questions was, how do you know what it's going to sound like? Well, you can notate it in the finale notation program, and you can see the small print there. You have this on your score. You can see the instrumentation down. You're going to hear the brass come in It's going to start with the rhythm section. I just can't get the whole thing on the page because it's too big. I mean, I can make it smaller, but it's almost illegible. Is that,
Oh, that's so much.
is that cool or not? No?
No.
No, you don't want that. Bigger? Bigger? So let's hear what the geniuses at Finale think this thing sounds like. Because now I can, now I can make some adjustments of it too. The brass doesn't sound right there, I can take the brass out. So I don't have to write it all out, give it to the orchestra, and let them play it through the first time to say, oh God, I gotta revise this thing. I can kind of do it electronically. So we'll listen to this. It's the same stuff now, orchestra. I want you to see, I can't get the whole thing in the picture, so I'm just trying to get you to see the action here. Here it is. Are you able to put together what I said at the beginning with what you just heard? Because those are all the little motives, and you saw how I sort of introduced them and stretched them out so you could hear them a couple times. That little chord developed into the rhythmic thing. The rhythmic thing was played by the brass, then it was played by the woodwinds, then it was played by the strings. They led to the jazz bass player. The jazz bass player led to the quintet, and now we're at the B section. Okay? Again, this is the finale version.
I have a question.
Oh, ah,
Dr. Hartway, I have a question.
please.
I'm sorry,
No.
I have a class conflict, so I'm asking it now. For a person who doesn't want to invest in the full finale program,
It's $200.
cost is no, well, the answer is yes, but we could have to bear.
And the answer is yes.
Are the smaller versions notepad a music writer of value to a person trying to experiment with this?
Anyone want to answer that? Because I've never used the other ones. I mean, I'm writing big stuff, so I want the big. And I know Paige would say buy Sibelius, but I don't know if it's still the same price.
The cheaper or free programs are very limited. Most of them only go to like 5 or 6 staves. So if you're writing smaller stuff that really doesn't use, a
Well,
lot of
if you're
different
writing for
instruments or a lot of
piano,
harmony.
Oh,
Yeah,
You don't need
then
to know.
that'll have most of what you need on it.
I have a question directly on your
yeah, sure, sure.
to my ear.
Yeah.
It is traditional harmonies with jazz variations, but now those have become rather traditional.
Yeah.
It's reasonable. Your creativity in expressing this piece doesn't rely on electronic sounds or Schoenberg scale. What do you feel is the core of the creative part?
Yeah, in this particular piece, it's far more traditional in concept. In its harmonic and melodic concept. In other pieces that I've got, I don't use this material at all. In other pieces I've got, you wouldn't even hear a triad in a lot of them. So this piece is unique to itself. And most of my pieces, I try that most of my pieces are. So my voice is always confused. I never know what I mean. Anybody else? Bridge? Ready for the bridge? Bridge, okay. Good. Thanks for the question, by the way. That's the beginning, opening salvo of the orchestra and the jazz group together, and now the jazz group is going to do, going to improvise a little bit, which I want to talk about. Okay, questions? Sir?
Yeah, I'm a modern dance choreographer, and so I know well.
Don't touch it. Don't touch this piece.
I know very well the challenge, I guess, between sort of my own voice, my own meaning, setting up that thing, and then do I care if anybody else gets that meaning? Do I
Right.
How accurate? I mean, how do I value my success, or how do I rate my success? Because I could just put anything out there and say, well, it's my art, and whether you get what you get. So my question is, what do you have? Do you have sort of, as part of your process, do you have other people, do you invite them in to hear it? Do you care sort of, how do you know if you're in the ballpark? Do you care, about audience reactions?
I really appreciate that question, yes. The other participating member of this group is my wife, who is a really fine musician. She's a harpist with the Detroit Symphony on occasion and elsewhere, and has played internationally. She has a great sense of what I'm trying to do, because we talk about it all the time. She listens and she says, Jim, that's working, or Jim, that's not working, basically. And I say, okay, I trust that. But you ask a bigger question, too. Is it important that the audience thinks I'm thinking about mean streets or smoke? They're not going to know that. No way they know about smoke. I know about smoke.
Sure.
I mean, the title is Mean Streets. Audiences are going to get and take whatever it is they're going to get and take from a piece. And you know how you tell if you've succeeded at the end?
Sure. Yeah.
Basically.
But I mean, if, and this is a question that I have, if 90% of your audience walks away happy, but you intended to write a sad piece, then I would think that I don't know what to do with that information, you know. And so there's something. I mean, I think that I don't know.
Well,
It's
well
hard
then,
to talk about it, I guess.
as Liberace used to say, if you know who Liberace was, I laughed all the way to the bank. At least there might be that residual for it. I don't know. Talk about residuals. I was very fortunate that our university helped to sponsor the writing of this piece through a grant from Chris Collins and one that I got too from our Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. When we got to Italy, this is the only concert in my entire career, life, whatever you want to call it, because it hasn't been much of a career, that I had to buy my own, I had to pay to get in. I had a bunch of people coming, so I bought like 20 tickets. It was really, really curious. But otherwise, the Italians, and I'm half Italian, were really wonderful. They were just fabulous hosts. Okay, now we come to the improv part, and I just want to go through that quickly with you. And you've got this sheet, okay? This sheet. It's the smaller, there are two of them. It's the smaller, it's not the legal size, but it's the regular size. So, now you're going to see that there are no notes for anybody to play, that there's some suggested chord voicings for the piano player, and then there are chord changes. You will also notice that the meter changes, and the meter has been changing. It's not been straight ahead 4/4. This has been interspersed with some 5/4 measures. Some of you are aware of that, some of you aren't. It doesn't matter if you knew that or not, but that's the fact of the matter. So now, the jazz musicians get to play, just look at the sheet, they're going to play this. This is C minor, F13, D7, whatever those chord changes are there, G7, 13. And then there's this little passage that interrupts it, which is really not in jazz vocabulary. Ah. So now I'm going to improvise on that a little bit. Does that? And then it goes like this. Oh, I'm sorry, it goes like this. And this is the bridge. Etc. Okay? So the jazzers really don't have anything to play on except the chord changes. I just played the bridge incorrectly. Those stop probably notice that. So, but that's not a revelation to those of you that are not jazz musicians. It's a revelation to those of you that wonder, well, what are they doing here? I give them the chord changes, and they play melodic lines based on those chord changes and play over that. Okay? Then later in the piece, I set in some backgrounds for the orchestra to play to accompany that. And then the piece ends. The first movement ends. And there's a cadenza at the end of the first movement, which I'm going to let you hear. Play the whole first movement of that, which is completely improvised. Okay, the two saxophones completely improvised. So you ready for the real? Now this is the live performance I'm going to play for you. But I'm going to try to line it up with this stupid thing. Again. So let me get back together here. This is going to be hard to do. Jennifer, do you think this thing needs to be, what do we need to do with this now? Just try to make it play?
Yeah.
Probably a good idea.
It should be fine.
Okay. Here we go. Let's see what we got. Okay, that's just where I want it. So here's the live, this is the premiere performance you're going to hear. What you're going to see on the window, the other one. We're going to turn the sound down so we can't hear it. I hope that's what's going to happen. And I got to press. Just a little bit pip. Kind of. This is real musicians, live people. Played for years with Michel Petrucciani. Chris Collins and Manuel Chisi. Sean Dobbins, Detroit, Sean Dobbins. That's how far behind. Any questions on that? Please, Scott. That was Chris, in case you were wondering.
Obviously, there's some advantages with notation programs, with being able to hear things that you might not be able to play on the piano right away. But one of the disadvantages, I think, is that it may give you like a false sense of orchestration color.
Oh.
How do you deal with that kind of conflict when you're relying on hearing
Yeah,
things?
that's a really good question. I've been very lucky. From the time I was a kid, the early 20s, I had pieces played by orchestras. And I heard enough of my own pieces played by orchestras to know that the finale program doesn't do it. I even told Chris when I gave him the finale version, because I said, Chris, if it sounds anything like this, I'm going to jump off a bridge and turn it, because it's just horrible finale reproduction of this. But I also taught advanced orchestration for 30 years, and I have an idea of how this is going to work. So it's just experience, Scott. I don't know any other way around it.
So you can substitute the part, like you can substitute hearing that, and then your mind can jump to what the actual.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
I mean, I don't know what, it was just experience, that's all. And I can't tell you how many times I've went over this and listened to this. And you know, as a composer, you got to go over your stuff. You can keep thinking about it, revising it, changing it, tweaking it. That's pretty well it is. And I've got about 10 minutes. I was supposed to leave some time for questions and answers, or I can go on to the third movement a little bit, tell you how that, the second movement, and tell you how that materialized. But I'll be glad to answer questions. Now I can tell my favorite joke. People are always afraid of asking stupid questions, right? And I've taught here for 40 years now, and I have never heard a stupid question, but there have been some really stupid people asking them. That always shuts everybody right down. Okay, so now flip to this big sheet of paper, and I did not let you hear the cadenza, which I should have, but I might not. Save that, and this thing. I have a little cabin in Tobermory, Ontario, and I go up there to try to write, and I do write, and I wrote this entire piece up there, as a matter of fact. I had finished the first movement, and you're feeling, oh man, I feel good, oh yeah, euphoria. Now what the hell am I going to do? Because I got to end up. My plan was, and this is the movement called Renaissance Cities. What is it called? We say it there. Yes, Renaissance Cities. I want to write something really optimistic, something bright, something up tempo that will leave the audience feeling ebullient in some ways. That there's hope. I don't know. I mean, I hope there's hope. And I also wanted to write something that was really fast, so that the audience would wonder at the end. I even thought of this. I want them to be scratching their heads, thinking, how the hell did they ever play that? How did they ever get through that? There was a flurry of notes and at a real up-tempo pace. Okay, so I took a. I can tell you exactly how long. A 55-minute walk after the first movement was over, and I started thinking what I wanted to write. And when I was done with the 55-minute walk, here it is. This is what I wrote. I went back in and I basically wrote it down. And I'll show you a little edge to it here. Hope this plays right. Turn it up. Oops, I better start again. I'm sorry. I didn't have the sound. When you hear it, you say, well, I can see why you're able to do that with taking a walk. But it's the bridge. And then the little tagging is this. That's now. Now, the jazz musicians in here already know that those are the chord changes to I Got Rhythm. I Got Rhythm. These are the chord changes to the Gershwin tune I Got Rhythm. So I could actually play, and I think I wrote it out for you on your sheets in there. To this little tune that I wrote. I wasn't even thinking the chord changes. I was just thinking melodic contour when I wrote this, and it just happened to come out to be, it ended up being the chord changes to I Got Rhythm, which fits perfectly for the jazz musician because they are so used to playing the rhythm changes in the vernacular. So they were happy with something they could easily blow through rather quickly. Now the question becomes, well, what do I do with the orchestra? How do I orchestrate this, et cetera, and so forth? And let me, since we're running out of time here, let me just cue up to the orchestra playing this. This is the second movement called Renaissance Cities, and you'll see how it all then came out the wash. Any questions? You okay? Okay, now let me see if I can find this. Jennifer, will this go to Q2, I think? It should, shouldn't it? Yeah.
You got it?
Nope. Yep,
Oh, okay.
I think. And play. Ready? This goes faster than it should have. But we got an ovation. Actually, we got a standing ovation after the first movement, and I think everybody on stage was a little excited. So it gets a little out of hand, and I warn you. Okay? Here we go. happy to answer questions if you have, and if people have to go, they can, and I'll stay. But yes, ma'am.
How much of this is the gesture toward the big band sound, full orchestra?
Yeah, it was a big band piece for full orchestra, really. As a matter of fact, one of the write-ups about that said that it reminded them of a big band piece, but interpolated onto the orchestra. Yeah, you got it right on the button. And very standard chord changes too. Sure.
Did you run into any rhythmic issues with the orchestra, like having them swing 8 notes and stuff like that?
There's always a problem, and I was really concerned. This was an all Italian orchestra, and most of them didn't speak English. But the conductor had a very good sense and a very good feel for the piece. And when Chris and the jazz group came in and rehearsed with him, they got it right away. It's not that they never heard jazz; they hear a lot of jazz over there, so they got it. I thought. I mean, they did the best they could. There's still some guys that doing like this with their violins, but that can't be helped. That's the nature of the violin. Yes, ma'am.
You write in a lot of different genres. When you write a piece like this that, is jazz and also, with a classical orchestra, do you approach it mentally differently than you would if you were writing,
Yes. The answer is yes. The harmonic and melodic vocabulary, rhythmic vocabulary are way different than I have 3 CDs over there that will be completely different from anything you heard here. If you want to buy them, they're $5. I don't care if you don't. But you already know the answer to that, I think. But you hear the music on those CDs and you say, "This is the same guy that wrote that piece." You'd be surprised. So yes, I'm a chameleon. Yes, ma'am.
Just one more, I think that would be a tribute to your versatility, because some composers can only write one style, one genre, and everything else comes out sounding the same. You know who they are, because they always have that chord in there,
Yeah.
always have this rhythm no matter what.
Yeah.
And the fact that you do so many genres, I think, is a tribute to your creativity.
It's a tribute to the fact I want to make a living. But I appreciate what you're saying. Anybody else? Anything else? It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate being in front of the guys.
You said you're selling your CDs?
I'm selling CDs, and Jennifer's taking the money. She's watching you very carefully. You can have everything but the full scores if you want to keep the little